Hello, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parsha Shoftim. Okay, we're going to spend the next 2 minutes discussing a central question that shows up in the Parsha and their Ramban's response to that question. The first question shows up. We're going to skip to the end of the Parsha, the very last parak. It's Dvarim parak Chaf Aleph, in which we find the first 9 psukim discuss the dinim of Egla Arufa, the beheaded, or we'll call it killed from the neck, beheaded calf. Okay, now interesting discussion. What is this parak doing here at the end of the parsha? That's for another time. First question that's going to be discussed is what's the purpose of this procedure? We'll go through the psukim briefly and outline them. In that we find a dead body. We're not sure where it is closest to, meaning that there's 2 cities and it's in between those 2 cities. We have to measure from that closer city and try to find which city it's closest to. And from there, we have this whole process where you find this newborn calf, whatever it may be, in a certain age, and we take it and we kill it. We behead it by Nachal Eitan. This calf has not been able to be worked in its life. It is something that is completely, so to speak, innocent, and we are killing it in this sense to serve as a message to the people. The question is, what is that message? Okay, now 2 different takes. The Ramban itself, we're a little bit short on time, so we're going to be discussing briefly outside that idea just by looking at 2 opinions. The Ramban describes how he himself views this situation, but first he discusses how the Rambam, his counterpart who lived 100 years earlier, the Rambam in Spain, writes famously that when it comes to the Inyan Ha'arifa, the Rambam writes in Mor Nevuchim, Ketam legalot al harutzeach ulevayer damo. Bavor asher berova pamim yerutzech min ir asher sibos hachalak sheyatzu zakenim b'yitasku b'medida ha'iv zikna ir ha'iyah yidu lifnei haborei shlo yitrash lebetikun adrachim v'shmartam v'shinim modim bihar getzeh. However, what happens? Ukisha yachkor ha'inyan yasfu zakenim v'yaviu ha'agala v'yirbu b'nei adam l'daber bo ulai gal ha'davar. Boom, key line. That what happens, people start talking when people are gathered together. It's natural. The Rambam focuses on human psychology. People start talking, and once people get gathered together for this weird ritual, so it's like beheading a calf, and the outskirts of the city, people start talking, and they'll be like, oh, yes, that occurred, and therefore we will narrow down and we'll find out who the Rutzeach is. I want to know who the murderer was. Then we do not need to go through the process of beheading the actual calf. Interesting. The Rambam doesn't focus so much on the actual essence of the ritual of the Agla, Arufa, but rather in the gathering process and human psychology. Now, the Ramban, while he does bring down the Rambam's opinion, says something a little bit differently. He says, like I was stating before, the masa of the actual Agla Arufa is not so apparent in this fact that people gather together and they'll find out who the murderer was. However, the Ramban writes in his eyes that really this act of the Agla Arufa, that it has a certain aspect to it that brings up this certain kapara, this certain sense of attributing to who the actual murderer was. The actual ritual itself has significance, the Ramban famously writes. And based off this, similar to how the Sir Mishtaleach, the goat that is sent out on Yom Kippur, that is pushed off the cliff, is a weird sort of korban. It's similar to perhaps things that are not done in the Beit HaMikdash, meaning that we do this outside the Beit HaMikdash, similar to other nations, though there is something inherent to this that perhaps we could discuss. That I heard this from my grandmother, and it's an idea that's been brought forward and many other understandings, that there is this understanding that Bnei Yisrael, when they see this ritual itself, it brings them closer, and the actual essence of a fresh calf that's being slaughtered in front of their eyes, and a calf that's never worked before, it will bring them to this, it will evoke their emotion to realize who was the person who did this. And it, in essence, is a wake-up call, and perhaps this time of year is a very apparent and message that should ring home to us all heading into not only the second week of Elul, but Rosh Hashanah coming up within the next 24 days. So as we head into the Shabbos, hopefully we take this message home, and wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, U'Mevorach.